Hey gang, this week's episode is brought to you by oldschoolshirts.com. Hey, check them out. You like defunct teams and leagues and t-shirt form? Well, you'll find them there, but a whole bunch of other stuff too. Do you remember a radio station of the past or perhaps a mall that you used to go to? All kinds of great cultural and sports memories can be found at the great folks at oldschoolshirts.com. Promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. And now, here's our show.
Pro football in the spring, and it's a new league, the United Football League. It's where hope hovers for dream chasers and opportunities arise, and where you, the fan, will get unprecedented levels of access into this sport our country is crazy for. Kickoff weekend, it is DC and San Antonio. With that, we say hello and thanks for joining us. Alongside Sam Acho, I'm Mike Monaco, Stormy Bonantoni, and Cole Kublik are down on the field. When the Super Bowl's over, doesn't mean that football season is over, because the UFL is here.
And it's here for opportunity for players, opportunity for innovation. You'll have unprecedented access, but also rules changes, some rules that you actually see in the NFL.
We'll get into all of that. How's it look? Glad you asked. This is the merger of the USFL and the XFL. We've got 8 teams spread among 2 conferences, an XFL conference and a USFL conference. 10 weeks, 4 playoff teams, the title game in St. Louis, where they are rabid for football. Our 8 UFL teams look like this in the XFL conference: DC, St. Louis, Arlington, and here in San Antonio. Then the USFL: Michigan, Memphis, Birmingham, Alabama, and Houston. And that's how we get to 8.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, hello there, friends. It's your pal, Tim Hanlon. It's Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. Thank you for finding us. Hope your holidays continue to go well, and thank you for sticking with us throughout this year. And we are going to reward your listenership with our 5th-ish annual year-end Holiday Roundtable Spectacular. Yes, it's back again as we take some time to commiserate what we lost in 2024 and what possibly we might lose in 2025 and beyond in the world of forgotten sports, defunct teams, and all that kind of stuff, leagues of yore or potentially of yore. And joined again by 2 stalwarts and defunct sports enthusiasts, Steve Holroyd and Paul Reeths, and yours truly, and a wild number of topics that we'll be talking about in this week's Roundtable Spectacular episode. The first of which, well, not the first of which, but at least at the top there that you just heard was the unification, if you will, of the 2 previous struggling spring football circuits, that being the second incarnation of the USFL and the second incarnation, or perhaps third incarnation if you're keeping a scorecard at home, of the XFL, which of course brought us the UFL, the United Football League, which itself is a second incarnation. As you may remember, one of our earliest episodes with Michael Hugh of the original UFL back, I don't know, it's almost 15 years ago now, I guess. But if you could sort of keep track of all that, that's what you saw on ESPN back in March of this year. I think it was March 31st, the first ever, if you will, game of the second ever, if you will, UFL in the pro ranks, and the DC Defenders getting ready to battle the San Antonio Brahmas. So we'll talk about the UFL and what perhaps the second year might look like. And there's we'll discuss with both Steve and Paul. There is an open olive branch, I guess, if you can mix those two together, the idea of expansion, looking for further markets to expand the UFL. So onwards and upwards we go. But it wasn't always that way with the various topics that we'll be talking about. So in no particular order, we'll get to arena football, which was one of our predicted pans, if you will, from last year's episode. And we will talk about the implosion of that version of arena football in the final that was played in a mall of all places in northern New Jersey on CBS Sports Network. But apparently is going to come back as the AFL 1, which is sort of another yet further incarnation of the arena approach to indoor football. The Oakland A's will certainly talk about and their move to Sacramento, and we think still Las Vegas, but it's still not completely 100% sure. Major League Cricket we'll be talking about again. That was back for its second year. The Savannah Bananas, interesting stories, just sold out Major League Baseball parks this year and have not only are on the road to doing so again in 2025, but also have sights on creating an actual league around their unique flavor of baseball. We'll talk about the Baller League, an indoor-esque soccer league in Europe that is promising to come to the States in 2025. The Premier Lacrosse League we'll talk about, and they're branching out into a women's division as they continued their migration from a festival-like setting to actual teams and actual markets. And interesting that comes on the heels as we record this week. Athletes Unlimited getting out of the women's lacrosse business. That was one of their 4 sports that Athletes Unlimited was running. And I think they got a little bit scared by what the Premier League lacrosse folks had in mind for their women's league coming up in 2025. Geez, the years just, they zip on by, don't they? We'll talk about volleyball. My goodness, pro volleyball. All of a sudden, now 2 leagues. This will be the second year of the Premier Volleyball League coming up, and it's going to go head-to-head, especially in 2 particular markets, especially. I think in Atlanta and in Omaha. The Love B thing. It's the what do you call that? League One Volleyball. The acronym is Love B, LOVB, which starts in earnest about a week's time from when we dropped this episode. We'll talk about the NWSL. We'll talk about the NWHL. We'll talk about the Arizona Coyotes absconding for Utah so hastily that they couldn't even figure out enough time to name the new club, for God's sakes. Still called the Utah Hockey Club. The USL Super League, we'll talk about them and a whole bunch of other stuff. So stick around for conjecture and folly as we get into what kind of passed away, if you will, this year and what we're looking forward to, or perhaps not looking forward to, in 2025. It's our year-end Holiday Roundtable Spectacular, and it starts in a moment's time with Steve Holroyd and Paul Reeths. Just a quick note to say thank you for listening for all of this year. We hope your holidays are going well and that your new year shapes up to be as good, if not better, than 2024. So let's segue right into it now, shall we? Have a seat, grab a leftover cup of eggnog or whatever else you're trying to continue the holiday merriment with. Enjoy this conversation we had just about 2 weeks ago. As always, please enjoy. All right, well, let's start the official festivities. So, thank you both for joining us on this excursion yet again for our, I don't know how many years we've been doing this, on and off and all that kind of stuff. And it's just the 3 of us this year. I think we have. I think our friend Andy Crossley is officially retired, or trying to retire from this craziness that we think of as defunct sports and all that kind of stuff. And it is my job to make him feel guilty for doing so this year. But I thank you again for both for joining us. And maybe Paul and then Steve, why don't you just remind our audience what your individual adjuncts into this illness we call defunct and forgotten sports might be, and frankly, the seemingly ever increasing circle of influence that this seems to have. In particular, Paul, I think maybe most specifically for you, is the just the onslaught of new leagues and private equity money and stuff that maybe, at least in my mind, is creating unwittingly new fodder for this show in the years to come when the bubble bursts. But what are you working on these days in this realm?
So over the last 25 years, I've run a site called Our Sports Central that focuses on minor league sports and kind of those secondary sports below the big four sports leagues in America. And so you're absolutely right. It seems that, we came out of COVID and things were slow for a while. And now there's just been kind of an explosion of new sports, new teams in older leagues, and just new attempts to start things. So it's kind of an exciting time to be around. In addition to Our Sports Central, I also run a site called statscrew.com, which covers statistics for a lot of these minor and secondary leagues over the years. Steve, who will jump on in just a minute here, has helped me with a lot of that research, including uncovering the standings for something called the International Boxing League of 1969. So in addition to those two websites, also wrote a book on the original and real and only United States Football League from 1983 to 1985.
A
So
great
those are
episode. If you haven't listened to it, friends, please, by all means, put your podcast feed down and go get that episode. It's a great primer on the USFL.
I appreciate that. So that's my street cred.
All right. Before we go to Steve, remind us, Paul, how you kind of, got into this vortex of craziness in secondary sports and that kind of stuff in the first place.
What really drew me in was the USFL. I was a young man, loved just getting into football, and here you had professional football an extra several months a year, almost year-round pro football in the U.S. And to me, that was just fascinating to see it enter new markets, try a different time of year, introduce its own twists on the game, such as instant replay, and even the two-point conversion, which wasn't used in the NFL at the time. And in addition to that, I always kept an eye on things like the Major Indoor Soccer League at the time. And those were my two big ones. And so after I got out of college, I had thought about a way to exercise this passion, I guess. And lo and behold,
exercise or exercise?
Well, at the time it was exercise. And I've often wondered after that if I should exorcism. But it's a super fun industry, always changing. You just have to accept that going in, and then you enjoy it a lot more.
All right. And Counselor, remind us of your excuse or maybe before that, what you're currently into and up to.
Sure. What I'm currently into is I'm doing a lot of early basketball history, professional basketball history, essentially stuff pre-1980. Prior to that, I first got into this doing a lot of American soccer history. Along with that, with my good friend Dave Coleman, we have Crossecheck.com, which documents the history of professional box lacrosse. And we are starting in the new year PhillyClassics.com, which will be documenting Philadelphia sports history, not just the minor and forgotten sports like box lacrosse or roller derby and things like that, but also Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, the early stuff that even now tends to be forgotten. We have a very recency bias seems to afflict a lot of people. I got into this from a young age. I was interested in sports history that I was able to glean from the back of baseball cards and basketball cards. And when I took to soccer in a big way in the 70s as part of the American soccer explosion, I was annoyed that where's America's soccer history? There must be a history. And it was basically in my teens an interest in finding that got me into this never-ending rabbit hole, and which now expands to all sports. Paul keeps me entertained because he'll come up with things like the International Boxing League. I thought I was clever because I knew about World Team Boxing in 1974 that lasted all of one bout. And then he spits out International Boxing League one day, and I'm like, I need to find out about that. So it's a good symbiotic relationship here. He gives me assignments, I do them, he gets to put stuff up on his webpage. So it's very good.
Well, look, I have to also get my act together so that I get some conversational goodness out of these finds as well. So, peripherally, we know about some of these things, but the fact you guys are in the weeds, frankly, bringing these things to life or resuscitating them, I guess, after they've long been dead. And as we record this, Steve, I know you've been active surfacing a whole bunch of IBL boxing photos and that kind of stuff. But you got a bunch of different handles, right? So social handles and stuff. And we'll get your promos a little later on, but you've got one for basketball. You used to have one, or maybe it's dormant for soccer. I think lacrosse as well. You go by a number of different sort of I want to call them non-diplomes, but different handles, if you will, for your various sports and social media.
Well, not so much anymore. It's part of the big exodus. I've shut a lot of that down. So there's still on X the basketball account as in the low post. Soccer is still around at Soccer Maven, Soccer MAVN, and on Blue Sky I've done something bold and innovative. I'm just using my name, Steve Holroyd. .bsky.social, and that's doing whatever sport I feel like doing.
Well, that's interesting too. So I'm doing a lot more on the Blue Sky platform, and I'm noticing actually, and you guys may have as well, that there does seem to be a pretty strong movement by the sports industry, whether they be practitioners or commentators or sports entities, companies. Gravitating to Blue Sky, not necessarily abandoning Twitter per se, but making a pretty aggressive movement towards that. I guess my first question to both of you is, how do you what's your current approaches to social right now? Because it's so splintered and so polyglot right now. It's certainly a lot more complicated, and decisions almost have to be made in terms of what to follow, who's like legit out there, and where to glean information that's of quality and of substance for your individual needs and interests, but also for you to post into. So I'm just curious as to where your heads are at when it comes to social media in terms of keeping up and or populating with stuff.
Well, I may as well be an 80-year-old man because I am very slow on the social stuff. Fortunately, I have someone who handles most of that for me. We just started actually looking into Blue Sky, so we're well behind the curve on that. But yeah, there's so much out there, and especially as far as our Sports Central is concerned, I mean, there's dozens of leagues. So, just gleaning what is repost worthy or newsworthy or just keeping up on all of it can be difficult alone. But so unfortunate that I have somebody who kind of helps me out with that. But I'd love to hear Steve's thoughts on that.
Well, I guess I'm almost too new in the sense that of all of us, I'm the one that never got around to actually establishing my own website. So the only way in which I can put stuff out there that I find, at least the tidbits. I mean, Paul's been a great not resource, but a great place to put stuff when I come up with standings and stats and stuff. It's a good place to go to look for stuff like that. But as far as the tidbits and stuff, it's YouTube where I tend to focus on the more substantive stuff. It's video, obviously, longer form video. But even then, I'm not so much content. It's not original content. I'm just, hey, here's the 64 NBA All-Star game. I've colorized it. Watch it. As far as the shorts, the smaller pieces, there's still X, and it's usually just a photo or a screenshot of a news clip. Facebook is still out there. That's where Paul was able to alert me to the International Boxing League. There's certain pages that are good. You can post something and it's a friendlier environment because it's limited to the people that want to see that stuff. And Blue Sky is popping up. So, but I guess I focus more on providing content. I don't really worry about getting news. And as far as the other sports history stuff, I follow the people who I know I can trust, like Tim, like some other people. So the signal to noise, I'm able to control a bit. But where is that going? I mean, again, with X, I managed to avoid being political, so I'm not inundated with the political. But you just see people moving anyway. Some because it's a political statement, others because X really hasn't. It's not as friendly as it used to be, for want of a better way to phrase it. So, is blue sky the next big thing? Is it all going to fall apart? And it's going to be web page based again. We'll go back to prior to Twitter, where you had to go to ken.com, where you had to go to the American Soccer History Archives, Dave Litterer's great spot, where you had to go to Paul's sites, the ABA sites, remembering the ABA, I think was one of them. And you just get very content specific stuff from very specific sites. It's hard to say, but everything's in a state of flux right now for reasons. So who can tell?
Well, all right. So this conversation really is this sort of a balance between the past and our various areas of interest, as well as sort of things sort of in the future or maybe in the present even that perhaps threaten to repeat the past. So I'm just going to sort of throw it out sort of in sort of a roundtable sort of fashion. Let's start with a couple of sort of obvious situations that are sort of happening right now. And love to maybe get your take on it, because this certainly occupies a lot of our time as we, I don't know, necessarily root for the demise of these situations, but they certainly are popcorn worthy in terms of being fascinating and interesting. So I think perhaps prime among them is the Oakland A's saga that, will for a couple of years sit in Sacramento, and depending on the day and the week and who you're sort of believing is, credible in terms of the news and information, going to Las Vegas, supposedly, in a couple of years.
Here's the 1-2. Jankowski to Schumann. And the ground ball will end things. A 3-2 win for the Oakland Athletics. One more win for the Oakland fans.
A W on a day that everybody in the Bay needed one.
And there seems to be some substantial doubt about the funding and just exactly how all this stuff is going to come about. But what are your respective takes on the A's, the saga of it, and perhaps maybe what it portends for baseball? Because it does seem to me that this is maybe a textbook case of how not to move a franchise, not having your ducks in a row when it comes to your location and your stadium and your facilities and your funding and all that kind of stuff. It's bizarre to me that this kind of money involved and this kind of high profile sports franchise wouldn't have had a better plan going forward.
It seems to be a cursed franchise. I mean, I don't know who Connie Mack, what old gypsy woman he offended back in the 50s or whatever. Has there ever been such a successful and storied franchise kicked around so much? I mean, this is a franchise that even won World Series titles in Oakland, but was never fully embraced by Oakland. Was it the stadium's fault? Was it the team's fault? But going to your point, Tim, they said, okay, look, we're never going to get any headway here in Oakland, no matter what we do or say. We can't extort a stadium out of these folks. You would think they would have had a better plan B, other than saying, I mean, this is almost like Charlie Finley in the 70s. I'm going to go to Toronto. He would just throw out whatever city was out there and hope people would panic. In 2024, you'd think there'd be a little more sophistication other than saying, well, we'll go to Vegas. Which assumes a lot of things. It assumes Vegas wants them. It assumes that baseball wants to be in Vegas, because although the other sports are flocking there, baseball appears to still be a little touchy about the whole gambling thing. And as a result, look, maybe it's no great loss to go out to finally leave Oakland Alameda Coliseum, but you're going to Sacramento. I mean, that's never been floated as a major league city. And they are, they're total orphans. I hope they come back to Philadelphia. It won't happen. That would be poetic justice. But yeah, it's just in this day and age, like you say, Tim, they're not the first team to have done this. It's usually done much more effectively and with a lot more sophistication. And here it's just an embarrassment. I mean, letting Oakland die on the vine. I mean, it's not quite as bad as the Chicago White Sox, who may be, following the same path, trying to, improve their station. But yeah, I can't believe it's been this clumsily handled.
Paul, it's interesting to me that also this hurricane of craziness is going to go through two, theoretically, cities with pretty strong minor league baseball franchises already. Those entities have to be just flummoxed by all of this too.
The end game on all this is the perplexing part. I mean, we've seen franchises try to, blackmail different communities for new facilities, and that's what this is all about. They clearly felt that was not going to ever happen in Oakland, and so let's get out. And that seems to be as far as the thought process went. So you're going to have a team that's playing in Sacramento for probably at least 3 seasons. And it's going to be a weird Major League Baseball year because you're going to have the Tampa Rays playing in a minor league stadium too, because their facility got damaged. I just, it's always difficult to see this because you know that it's the money and the public and getting the public money that's the driver behind this. And if there's anything that soured me against really the major league sports, it's this thing.
Yeah, look, I think the Rays are absolutely part of this mixture too, because depending on the week, the funding for that situation seems to be now more in jeopardy, especially given the damage from the hurricane, right? And there is absolutely a better than 50% chance that the Rays may not wind up staying there if the public money doesn't come through. And we've heard about, cities like Nashville or Charlotte or Portland, Oregon, on their radar as well for potential moves for that franchise too. And you mentioned the White Sox. The shakedown has begun here in the city. Who knows what's going to happen with the Bears? Or the Fire have said that they want to now build yet another new stadium in the city environs. There's the Red Stars want their own thing. So, everybody wants their own facility. And I think maybe that's another way of saying a lot of sports, especially over the last handful of years, has almost really become, a real estate first kind of proposition. And, the sports stuff is almost secondary.
Right. And it's the revenue streams that come out of that real estate. Not only do you get your prime dates, you get concessions revenue and parking revenue and all the goodness that comes with having your own place. And especially if somebody else has to pay for most of it, you're reducing your own risk at the same time, there's just something fundamentally not right about that. I mean, when you look at Major League Baseball, when you look at the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, there's literally billions of dollars. The players are getting their cut. The owners seem to be getting their cut as always. Why is the public financing these facilities?
Yeah, Paul jumped in on just what I was going to say. This really isn't it's not really real estate, but revenue streams. Interestingly, maybe the one thing the so-called major sports managed to learn from MLS, because that was the big move MLS made. It realized it was going to stay alive. It couldn't do it by being renters in big football stadiums. And, and the Soto contract sort of, I was talking to someone about that today. I mean, look at the money Major League Baseball is giving away. It's not going out of business. And even though they don't have a salary cap, you got to figure there's a de facto revenue sharing that the players are getting half and the owners are getting half. And if there's that much money going around, you would think that the owners, if TV's paying that much, if merchandising's paying that much, if the high-end client, luxury boxes and what have you, are paying that much, you think maybe you could pass something, and you're getting public money. You'd think maybe you can pass something on to the casual fan, and not, whether it's the food not costing as much, the tickets not costing as much, because how much money do you need? I mean, it's going to Paul's point. I mean, with all the money floating around, particularly with TV, for reasons that will touch upon, I think, some of the other leagues we're talking about, live content is at such a premium for television and streaming services that these leagues can pretty much command whatever they want as far as a price, and yet the regular fan is still paying more than ever for tickets. And of course, on the back end, through taxes, I'm now expected to subsidize your business. It's when you hear people saying, I don't relate anymore, it's usually old folks like us, but there's reasons, and these are part of it. It's just such a disconnect from what real people understand and have to live with. It's tragic.
Yeah, the irony here is that all these teams and leagues, especially those that gain some certain level of mass appeal, right, do gravitate to this real estate first, own one's facility for complete ownership of revenue streams. I mean, I don't know where that sort of ends, right? So you look at, say, the New York metropolitan area, like the Islanders building their new arena a couple of years ago, just next door to Belmont Park, right, in Elmont, New York, right, where the New York Cosmos, actually, when they were in the second version of the NASL, we're talking about building a soccer-specific stadium there. That's 3 NHL teams in the region that each have their own arenas, right? And then, I think the last thing that the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area needs is another indoor arena, but you've got like 4 or 5 of them now sort of spread out. And beyond the one team, the same thing with the Prudential Center in New Jersey for the Devils, right? You got to fill that building with other stuff. And there's only so many concerts to go around. And you look at the New York metro area, having grown up there and visiting there on a regular basis, there are a handful of nights for each of these facilities that are dark. They don't have anything going on. I mean, Madison Square Garden may be the outlier, but it's got a lot of other incumbent things going for it, in particular 2 franchises that keep the lights on, so to speak. But they have no problem filling the schedule, but the others do. And I guess the biggest head scratcher and to me was, and I don't know if it's a success or the beginning of the end, and that's this Kansas City Current soccer specific stadium. The NWSL team in Kansas City just hosted the final game there on CBS national television at that rate. Relatively small, but it is theirs. It's not even sharing an MLS facility. Now, how many more of those can major metropolitan areas or smaller ones support, and how downspout can you go with leagues and to support these things? Where does it stop?
And that's a weird one in Kansas City, where the women's team has its own facility, but you had mentioned the problems that soccer teams had trying to fill football stadiums and trying to make those work. And so, to a certain degree, soccer specific stadiums make sense, not only from that revenue stream that we talked about, having a facility that you control, you're the primary tenant, you might get all or a cut of concessions or parking or whatever. That's very, very helpful. But you look at the costs and benefits of a soccer stadium as opposed to something much larger like a football stadium, maybe 70,000 seats running $2 billion plus, whereas you can build soccer for $200 million to $350 million, possibly fill twice as many dates. The downtown might not feel it quite as heavily, but the restaurants around are certainly going to be full. You're going to be putting people in hotels. There's a lot of benefits, I think, that can potentially come from, a soccer specific stadium. The Kansas City situation, like I said, is weird in that you have the 2. You think that, they could have made things work at the Sporting Kansas City field. But I think that this is where soccer has succeeded over the last 10 years, is in getting these facilities built. And now you do have communities, not just the people in the communities, but the actual infrastructure of the communities, the community government that has they have a dog in the fight. Are you going to be a part of building this soccer specific stadium and then in any way allow that soccer team to fail? I think that you incentivize keeping this around, keeping these teams around, maybe more than you ever have in the past.
Yeah, I think soccer-specific stadiums really are the exception for the reasons Paul mentioned. I mean, it not only were they servicing soccer, which doesn't draw the way NFL does, but you'd think it would have also provided a home for other outdoor team sports that might have wanted to make a go of it, but weren't going to fill stadiums. I'm surprised you didn't see more use of the soccer-specific stadiums by either things like Major League Rugby or the Premier Lacrosse League or the women's teams, which makes, like Paul said, makes the Kansas City situation odd. I mean, is it really about, is it like an ego thing among these teams? Well, I want to control my revenue streams. I don't want to be a tenant. I mean, we have a really strange situation here in Philadelphia. You have the Wells Fargo Center. It's owned by Comcast, previously owned by the Flyers. The Sixers are tenants there. The Sixers draw really well. The Sixers, I'm sure, have a very nice deal. And yet they're insisting, to their credit, at their own expense, but they're insisting on building a new arena in downtown Philadelphia, which very close to Chinatown and and everyone's saying it's going to have the effect of just destroying the culture there and what have you. But going to Tim's point, to what end? I mean, are their egos so fragile that we want to have our own facility so we could say it's ours, even though it's going to be dark? Because, I mean, Wells Fargo isn't open every night with concerts. Indoor soccer never came back. It's not like, oh, well, now we'll bring back Major Arena Soccer League, bring back the kicks, bring back, we'll think of some other sports. There's no talk about a WNBA team yet. But is it the same as with the Kansas City women's team? Is it like ego driven? We want you to build a stadium for us because we don't want to be a tenant. It's a bad look. Very strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the idea of mixed use, right? That's kind of the sort of the key now, I guess, to get to any kind of public money, right? Is it has to be. You look, for example, at Geodis Park in Nashville, right? It's in a section that's essentially a little mini city that's been built, right? Everybody wants to replicate the Battery project in Atlanta, right? Where they, essentially it's a suburban office park with stadium attached with multiple revenue streams. What they're doing Wrigley Field, right? Which is basically buying stuff all around it and making it sort of like a mini multimodal full year sort of attraction kind of thing, even though there's no baseball games going on in December or January. But Steve, to your point, I think that's right. That to me, that's the irony is that these, let's say these soccer specific stadiums in particular should absolutely be looking at things like Major League Rugby or a UFL team, which we'll get to in a second, or some of these other the Premier League lacrosse kind of things, or these other outdoor sports that could benefit from another facility. Because arguably, it's just interesting about how the stadium is almost the first thought. And the Clippers now have their own joint, to their credit. But you look at Las Vegas. This is a really interesting thing happening in Las Vegas. You got almost the opposite, right? So there's this hint that there's a whiff, right, of an NBA expansion franchise or relocation, probably expansion first and foremost into Las Vegas. And while a lot of people have been paying a lot of attention to what Oakview Group and Tim Lewicki and friends, a guest we'd love to get someday to talk about the old MISL, but I digress, about building a place down sort of on the southern part of the Strip, specifically for an NBA franchise. It's interesting, this week as we record this, there was actually an approval for development right next door to the Sahara at the north end of the Strip, where the land has already been cleared for an NBA arena and some other buildings around there. And interestingly, when that was announced earlier this week or last week, the guy who's in charge of the T-Mobile Arena, where the Vegas Golden Knights play, basically said they're both nuts. Why bother when we've got this facility here? We'll just get $300 million more to upgrade it. So you literally have 3 projects all chasing a non-existent NBA team in Las Vegas. It is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and you look at this stuff is enormously costly to these communities. Even in the case where teams build their own facilities, there's a lot of infrastructure work that has to be done. But typically, the cities or some kind of government is kicking in for at least part of it. And every economic analysis that's done tells them it's not worth it. And every single time one of these comes up, there's this grotesque attempt at math to prove that it does work. And it just does not work for these communities. And so, we're talking about a little bit of ego. The communities have it too. We got to be a major league city. Well, you're a fine city the way that you are without shelling out hundreds of millions or billions of dollars for something that's here 10 nights a week. Or 10 nights a year, sorry. There just seems to be this odd measuring stick. And when in reality, none of the major leagues don't need it. They just don't need it. They could do it themselves, but they know they can get away with not doing it and continuing to play this community musical chairs and getting the taxpayers to kick in hundreds of millions or billions of dollars for their facilities.
Which makes this Phoenix Coyotes NHL thing to Utah this year as the Utah Hockey Club, right? Not only did they have to cram themselves into the Delta Center in Salt Lake, but they also dispensed with getting a real name for the year or two. But that's the NHL, right? Been trying to make Phoenix and that area, whether it's Tempe or Glendale or Scottsdale or whatever, work for years, and you got to give some of the locals credit there for just kind of saying no.
What are you thinking right now, Tyson? What?
Fighting the tears, man.
What are your emotions?
Fighting the tears.
What do we do tomorrow? You want to go play golf?
Yeah, you wake up unemployed, I guess. It's a sad day, and sad for the players. Everybody loves playing here. That's the saddest part about it. Hockey works here in the desert. It works in Arizona. I hope they follow the same trajectory as the Winnipegs, that they eventually at some point down the road get a team back.
Under a minute remaining. Coyotes are going to win this one. They're going to finish with a mark of 36-41-5. Oilers, pretty much a meaningless game for them. They'll wrap it up tomorrow night in Denver. Coyotes will clear the zone. You don't need me talking over this. I'm gonna let it go.
And I don't know. To me, it gives a whiff of, and with Oakland too, to some extent, of some kind of hope, saying, you know what, not at any cost. Chicago, for example, saying no to FIFA for the World Cup. As a huge soccer fan, I lament the fact that no games will be in Chicago this coming tournament. But knowing the politics and the economics of the city and the environs of Chicago, I don't blame the officials at all. The ridiculous onerous terms that FIFA imposes on these local communities and the revenue that they siphon off. I think it's fiscally responsible to say no. Sad as it might be for me as a fan.
No.
Well, it's ironic or coincidental or maybe both that you mentioned hockey at this point because Canada lost teams because for years, and even I think currently, even to the present, the philosophy up there was, no, we're not spending a dime on arenas for sports teams. So when Quebec said we could use a better arena, yeah, well, build it yourself. We're not going to do it. The team left town. The first version of Winnipeg, same thing. But that said, the NHL's obsession with the Sun Belt is curious. I mean, I was never a fan of it, but at least I understood why Gary Bettman, was doing what he was doing at the turn of the century. He wanted a TV contract, and he figured he wasn't going to get a TV contract with a league that was all in in Canada and the northern United States. But now, where TV is trying to throw you money because it doesn't matter where you are, but the fact that you're providing live content, which I can then in turn charge max rates to advertisers because they know people won't fast forward past the ads. Why he's still insisting, instead of letting the team go back to Quebec or Saskatchewan or somewhere else, Portland, I don't know, someplace with
Ottawa.
more. Ottawa, the Senators, Hamilton maybe.
Sure. Sorry.
Senators.
Quebec City, sorry.
Yeah, Quebec City. He's insisting on, no, I'm going to keep it in the United States, in Utah. I mean, which, did it ever have a hockey team? Didn't in the WHA. I don't think I had a team in the Western League in the 50s and 60s. It's odd, this Bettman's continued obsession with the Sun Belt. But part of it might be that the Quebec is still saying, no, look, you're welcome to come here, but we're not buying it. We're not going to build your rink for you. And you're seeing, Arizona realized that. It's like, no, this is hockey. No one's going anyway. Why would we flush all this money down the drain? And again, in Philadelphia, the team said they were paying for it up front, but maybe because they realized the city would have said no. I mean, although curiously, the Wells Fargo Center was also built with private money, as was the Spectrum. It's always been a little different here, I guess. Although not the outdoor stadiums. They were very much publicly funded. But yeah, it's maybe people have had enough. They see what players are getting paid. They see what TV contracts are going for. They see what ticket prices cost. And they say, something, no, I'll watch it on TV. I don't need to have it live anymore. I'll go play somewhere else. I don't care.
Well, let's talk about, I want to get to the UFL in a second, specifically for Paul. But before we get there, I do want to double click on the TV thing, because TV and streaming, I mean, as yours truly, the day job is advising and consulting various clients in various forms of the media and advertising and technology spaces. And, the media industry is going sideways and then some, and that's being charitable, I think. It's interesting that as we record this, the Juan Soto mega contract with the Mets, right? I mean, a lot of the economics of these deals and these players and are predicated on substantial television money, and in particular for the sports that aren't the NFL, particularly baseball, right? Where regional sports networks for the last 30 years or so have been the, especially for bigger markets, disproportionate funnel of substantial funds to pay for these gigantic contracts. Now, there are 3 RSNs in New York City metropolitan area, right? I don't know how many of those are going to last for that long. And frankly, I don't know if the RSN model is long for this world as things become more digital, more streaming, and more, frankly, direct to consumer. I guess I'm wondering if maybe sports is starting to enter its Hollywood moment, right? Where there's sort of ignorance and, it's, we're going to be fine. And all of a sudden, the assumptions of the economic model start to dissipate at a relatively rapid clip. I think any actor, any director, any film production company in Hollywood will now tell you that things are getting very desperate now. And I wonder, as these RSNs start to melt away in a bunch of different markets, whether certain teams are going to be able to keep up, because the television revenue, so to speak, is not even going to be near what it used to be.
Well, it seems like they're gravitating towards the pay-per-view model, basically, which I find very odd. And Tim, you may know better than I do. I mean, has the MLS experiment been successful? I mean, I have not.
Nobody seems to know.
Yeah, I thought that was a disaster, but you're seeing more of that. I mean, when I'm looking to see what's going on with where things going to be televised, it seems. I mean, like with the NBA deal, it's going to be on Amazon Prime next year. They've spun away from TBS in 25, 26, and it's going to be behind. It's not, I guess, a full-blown paywall, but the subscription services, and that just blows my mind. I can't believe they're that short-sighted that they don't think there's going to be a consequence by taking your product away from the casual viewer.
I think it's a real short-term view. When you look at the big four sports, they can probably get away with it for a little while. Everybody's still going to be checking in on the NBA and the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL. But somewhere down the line, that lack of common exposure, I think, does bite you. And it comes a lot faster if you're not one of those big four. And Tim, that was, that came out this last week where the commissioner of MLS is questioning whether the Apple deal is hurting his league because it's not visible. They just had MLS Cup on Fox, but it's one of the few games that's been on accessible TV. Everything else is buried on Apple TV. So, how much has that deal actually been worth for the league? And has it lost maybe some of the exposure momentum that it had right at a time when it could really be, they could have Messi on every week on national TV. But they can't do that right now because it's all buried on Apple.
Yeah,
so
I think, Paul, I think you get different opinions about it. And I think it's interesting to see. I think the NBA looks at the MLS deal almost as a first mover from which to learn from, because if you talk to Chuck Dolan, or his son, sorry, I can't forget what his son's name is. The Knicks and stuff. I mean, he's already fighting back against. He's like, hell no, I've got my MSG network and my RSN money, and I'm in a big market, so don't mess with that. But frankly, Adam Silver in the NBA wants to go towards. They want to model themselves out to the NFL, right, where they have scale, they can flex, either into streaming or to large scale broadcast availability, and nationalize those rights so that everybody can have a fair shot at the revenue pie, versus what MLB does and what the NBA and NHL do as of now, which is RSN model, and that unfairly, at least from a competitive standpoint, favors the large markets, right, with the bigger media dollars. So I think all of it's in flux, and I don't know. MLS may be proven prescient, but it may take a few more years to kind of get there. That's kind of my soft opinion.
Yeah, Steve, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the MLS deal. They are not as visible as they even used to be, and the NBA maybe can do that a little bit more. They can be not as visible and charge a premium for their games. But I'm not sure that MLS is at that point. They can just disappear from existence for a large part of the public.
I can only assume on MLS's part that they realized, they said, our ratings aren't great on network television, but the people who watch us are the people who watch us. So rather than worry about getting money to be on Fox and or ESPN and not be that successful, let's direct price point our audience, and we're going to, the people that want to watch us will watch us, but they're going to pay for it and they'll be able to see it all. But we're only going to market ourselves to soccer fans. If that was the goal, as opposed to, gee, Apple's giving us a lot of money, it's too good to be true, it's pretty short-sighted, and I question with the NBA. I mean, the NBA, it's popular. But as someone who's paying much more attention to it these days and kind of chronicling things, I don't think it's growing. There's been a lot of pushback against the quality of play. There's been a lot of pushback against the quality of player. In many ways, it's almost like late 70s NBA prior to the arrival of Magic and Bird to sort of get people excited again. They may find themselves surprised if they try to go with a pay-per-view model. They find people not signing up. They currently kind of have it with their NBA TV. You know, if I decide to pay for the package, I can watch all these out-of-market games, and I don't. You know, I'm not that interested in the product. I'll watch what I could see over the air, and if they take it all away, and if it's only going to be accessible, I mean, if it's on Prime, they get lucky because I'm getting Prime because it's part of what I pay for delivery fees. But if they went to, say, Netflix or Paramount Plus or something, I'm a fan and I'm not paying for it. I'm not that interested in the product. And the NFL will always be able to get away with it because it's the NFL. These other sports may find themselves surprised because, as bigger picture, as people are cutting the cord and they're paying more for Disney Plus and they're paying for Netflix and they're paying for Amazon, they can only pay for so much. Right. Choices are going to be made, you know, and sports may find itself as the least desirable as opposed to access to movies or TV series and miniseries and things like that.
Yeah, look, you know, for the NBA, right? I mean, one easy fix, right, is literally as we record this, there's a lot more heat of late about the idea of expanding to Europe and maybe creating a European-based league that either in partnership with or in competition against the EuroLeague. And there's clearly room for growing the game and some of these international markets with their own domestic leagues and sort of, you know, adding a certain level of NBA sheen professionally to the operations and the dynamics and stuff. So, you know, and the NFL obviously wants to conquer other lands as well. So, you know, maybe it's an international kind of land grab, which, you know, obviously is an influx from soccer into the United States too, with multiple ownerships of teams and stuff. So I think globalization is going to be part of this mixture. But let's stick with a couple of more domestic things. I want to kind of do some roundtable stuff, some quick hits here. Because Lord knows we could talk about media and the dynamics of that forever. Paul, I want your take on the UFL after its, I guess, second successful year as its own thing. And now rumors or conversations about quote unquote expansion. What do you think?
So the league has mentioned, you know, expanding. They've at least put that thought out there, whether that's, you know, something that they're looking at very closely, or they want to cut any talk of, you know, the league not doing well. I think the league ratings rebounded a little bit this last year, which is important. Attendance is still an issue. I just, you know, I got to believe that there's still money being bled. But some will say that it's worth it for the networks because they have this live sports product that they control completely. We talked about the billions of dollars that the networks pay for television rights for leagues right now. Well, that you don't pay that for a league which you own and control. So, you know, they've looked at this, and here's maybe the network's response to a little bit of these growing rights fees is that, okay, we can be really patient maybe with this product that we own, that we control, and see if we can grow this. And I have to believe that they realized that it wasn't going to happen very quickly. It really feels to me as if the USFL, the new version, did not have maybe a long-term plan. And when they joined forces with the XFL, it really appears that the XFL people ended up steering the ship for a lot of it. And so we'll see, you know, how patient is Fox going to be with this product? How patient can their other partners be? ESPN, ABC, you know, it's far from a certain thing, but maybe a little bit of the talk lately has been a little bit more positive, particularly in regards to expansion.
Yeah, I think it feels a little bit more, it feels regional right now. And I think that's maybe why they're sort of talking it up. I will say, though, that there are a lot of players that got a couple of looks in preseason and actually stuck to some NFL rosters. So if there was ever a feeder league label, right, there you go.
Yeah, you have Bates in Detroit. You have the Aubrey in Dallas, two kickers who are just lights out right now. You have a kick returner in Dallas as well, and Turpin. They started off in the spring league. So, these spring leagues, they're developmental leagues right now. I mean, they're not competing with the NFL for any players, and yet they're still finding guys.
And tinkering with rules, right? I mean, we can debate whether the NFL's kickoff thing is any better, but you have to admire the idea and the. I think the fact that it saves the NFL a ton of bucks in terms of trying out stuff. Maybe we'll see a 2 and 3 point conversion kind of thing too. That's what these leagues are really, I think, really excellent at doing, and arguably can help improve the big game too.
They are excellent at testing different rules, and as you mentioned, the NFL kickoff, which worked far better in the XFL than it's really working out in the NFL, or maybe from an injury standpoint, it's working out perfectly for the NFL because rarely is a kick returned. But yeah, and you have these. I certainly can see where they would add maybe a 3 point conversion, so even more games are within range at the end. The NFL is, kind of shown a willingness to tinker with this throughout, its history, to have these different rule sets for the final couple minutes of each half. And so, yeah, hey, why not? Let's throw a 3 point conversion in there. I think they're going to have to address the kickoff in some way, though, because 7% on onside kicks or whatever it is now just doesn't seem to really be too exciting. But yeah, these secondary leagues and the UFL, I think, probably has to show more of a willingness to tinker and to experiment without being gimmicky. I think the XFL kickoff was something that they should have kept this last year and didn't. They went to a traditional kickoff just further up the field. So I'm hoping that they can come out with some more ideas to make the game exciting but not gimmicky.
All right, Steve, I got one for you. Give us an update on Major League Cricket.
Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Steve, you've got the coin, and we're on our way.
It's time for the championship in Dallas. Cognizant Major League Cricket Season 2. It comes down to this. A look at the two teams. Just the one change for the Washington Freedom. A fourth change. AJ Tai played one game earlier this season. Comes in for Lockie Ferguson. And a very strong Unicorns batting lineup that bowling team will have to contend with.
Kamai LaRue to Travis Head. Nice swing straight away, as we often see with the new ball. Lofted drive, that's in the gap, and that will be 4. So straight away, intent and aggression.
Tell me what it is, because I get excited about it. I saw the first season of it last year. I missed it this year, and I don't know. It didn't feel like it was a local league. It felt like it was just it was a television broadcast from India.
No, I mean that is the real problem with Major League Cricket, and it's the universal complaint among American cricket aficionados. The league itself, the quality of play was outstanding, top players, good crowds. They still only have the one actual stadium in Texas, in Prairie View. They're still playing in a park in Morrisville, but allegedly there's other stadiums being built. But, I mentioned earlier about MLS seems to have gone and said, well, we're only going to market ourselves to a soccer audience, so it's going to be on Apple TV and pay for it if you want it. Major League Cricket, it's clearly being marketed exclusively to the South Asian community. There's zero interest in growing or developing the game. you have to pay for Willow TV to watch it. I don't even think they put the first season, they put a couple games on CBS Sports Network. They didn't do that this year. When you see the games, the national anthems are being sung by Bollywood singers. I mean, it's really, it's
like a tour. It's more like a tour.
Yeah, it's a tour, and it's TV content for India. And but I guess it's been successful. They're talking about adding 4 teams for 2025. But again, it's almost like USFL the first year when they're all played out of the same stadium. The teams they could be called New York and San Francisco and Seattle, but they're playing in 2 locations. And while they're talking about they have a stadium ready in LA and they're going to have one in New York, it hasn't happened yet. It's no different than the early 2000s, the rugby league, where they all had names from different cities, but they all played out of one location. And they're totally content with that. I mean, they're not looking to be an actual sports league, but a television program for India. And it's such a shame because those of us here who know T20 cricket and enjoy T20 cricket, it'd be great if they actually tried to make the game something that was open to all. I mean, my big joke now, that great book, we know that great book about the Negro Leagues that Robert Peterson wrote, Only the Ball Was White. Well, American cricket now is only the ball is white, because that's in the stands, on the field, never mind minor league cricket, which is like exclusively South Asian with a smattering of West Indian players. And again, it's TV content. It's not a real league, and it makes it tough for someone like me to be interested. Never mind someone like you, Tim. You're genuinely curious, but you know what? You can't find it anywhere. It's a tragedy.
Yeah, the historic knock on soccer in this country it was so ethnic, and it was so, and obviously importing teams and all that kind of stuff. And it took a long time to sort of, quote unquote, get it Americanized, or at least digestible for the American audience. I mean, there's zero attempt to do that here, which is interesting. I've talked to other people, some of whom are Indian or foreign natives, and they too are kind of perplexed by the fact that you've got these named teams, but they're just not. There's no quote unquote local grassroots or connection, if you will. I don't know. It's a curiosity to me. And again, I didn't know nearly as much about it in year 2 as I did the first year. And to your point, it almost seemed like it was more difficult to find than it was more able to be found. A couple of other things I was going to throw out to you. Have any of you seen any of the Premier Volleyball Federation games?
From volleyball-crazed Omaha, Nebraska comes a special night in the history of the sport. Tonight, the Omaha Supernovas host the Atlanta Vibe for the first match in Professional Volleyball Federation history. Welcome to the CHI Health Center alongside Emily Eman. I'm Jake Herman. Emily, the wait is finally over. A concept years in the making becomes a reality tonight. Just how big is this night and this league for the context of women's volleyball in America?
Tonight shows how far the sport of volleyball has come in the United States, to have these players playing on their home soil in a real professional league where they can make a real livable wage, and to do that in front of friends and family. It's incredible for the players and for the fans, but also it shows those younger players coming up through the game what's possible beyond the college level.
Well, there are 7 teams participating in the inaugural season. Let's show you who and where these teams are. Tonight, we're in Omaha, the home of the Supernovas. They're taking on the Atlanta Vibe. Orlando, Columbus, Grand Rapids, Las Vegas, and San Diego, the 7 cities playing in year number 1. Each team will play 12 home games, 12 away games, and the season culminates in the middle of May, where a champion will be crowned and win a $1 million bonus prize.
Grand Rapids and Omaha, and those are the volleyball league, and then a new one coming up called Love B, which is partially Billie Jean King financed. Have you seen any of these games?
Yeah, I watched several PVF matches this last season. Very well done. I thought extremely athletic. The action is easy to follow, even for someone who's not familiar with the intricacies of volleyball. To me, the production values were good.
I agree. A lot of on YouTube, the streams and stuff. I totally agree. Very well produced.
Even as far as whether a ball was in or out, they have that tennis style, graphic that shows if it landed in or out. So you get answers very quickly on that kind of thing. And I thought that the game presentation from what I could tell, was fantastic. So I would mark myself as maybe a little bit of a fan of PVF. I don't get League One volleyball at all. They have these, basically they're the city names, I think, and some weird symbol, and they're going to be on ESPN. That's pretty much all I know about them.
Yeah, I mean, I also think, too, they might be benefiting from this year in particular, a lot more college volleyball on television this season, and the tournament and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Usually historically it's been, an outgrowth of volleyball in the Olympics, right? As we saw with the vaunted International Volleyball Association back in the 70s, coming off of Olympics in 76. But in this case, it seems like the college game is really starting to take off. Steve, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch any of it, but I think I think Paul's right. It's PVF at least is fun to watch. I think, by the way, also the women's hockey league. I guess it's now the National Women's Hockey League is what it's called. I have not seen any of those games yet, but I do hear that they are selling out arenas and doing quite well, especially up in Montreal and I think in New York too.
In fact, I saw a tweet right before the show where they talked about good crowds in their opening games. I have seen PVF and I like a lot for the reasons you said, but I think volleyball is going to be interesting because currently for a number of reasons we're seeing this massive investment in women's professional sport that we've never seen before. I think it's partially the age-old people want to get in on the ground floor of something that might be big. Right, just like you saw investment in soccer in the 60s, people are willing to do it because they hope they're getting in on the ground floor of something big. It's being motivated because, as we've discussed, TV needs content. There's a bit of it that we can attribute to social obligation, but we'll see how much of it succeeds. And I watch a lot of women's basketball, I watch a lot of women's soccer, and typically, in my view, the sports, the women's version of the sports suffer in comparison to the men's version. It's not as fast, it's not as strong, it's not as whatever. I don't see that in volleyball. It's funny when I watch women's soccer, I'm watching women's soccer. When I watch the WNBA, I'm watching women's basketball. When I watch the PVF, I'm watching women playing volleyball. It really is. It's not suffering in the comparison. As opposed to hockey, there's no checking. It's not even hockey to a purist. Right. So it'd be interesting to see if volleyball is the one out of all these that winds up having the most legs because it's the one sport where you watch it and you're not really paying attention to the fact it's women. You're just watching volleyball. So we'll see how that goes.
And I think volleyball, kind of like tennis, maybe the women don't have the same kind of power, and that makes the game better. Is that you're not acing each other all the time, but there are more sustained rallies. There's more excitement, and so maybe that's part of what I really came to appreciate. And you can see the athleticism involved, and so I do count myself a PVF fan now. To me, that was one of the really pleasant additions to the sports landscape this past year.
I thought for sure you were going to say the Arena Football League 3.0.
Okay.
Go ahead. Let's a quick moratorium on that, because apparently something else is going to now again come for next year. I guess called Arena Football 1. But tell me about AFL 3.0. What did you think? What happened there?
In last year's show, the AFL was the low-hanging fruit of sports disaster predictions. It just had train wreck written all over it, and it unfolded spectacularly. You had week by week teams imploding, embarrassing situation like homemade net systems being employed, players being stranded in different locations. Just every terrible thing that a league can do, this league managed to do over the course of 10, 12 weeks. It was truly spectacular. Switched the schedule almost weekly. Half the teams were dead by the end of the year. Any sensible group of people would have folded the whole thing up a month into the season.
You got to go out of your way to find the final that's on YouTube that was played I think hastily, in the American Dream Mall in New Jersey, where, by the way, a PWHL franchise, the New Jersey, I guess the Jersey Riveters, I guess it was, played their games. It's literally in a mall. There are not many seats. I don't think there are any seats really. People can just look over the overhang. And I, they were trying to make it like this was a really cool marquee place to play a game. Not so much, but that's how it ended. It was, and nobody seemed to know about it either, that the game was being played.
It is a beautiful summer afternoon, and we are all set for Arena Bowl 33 on CBS Sports Network. Welcome inside American Dream Mall for a sight for a championship game unlike anything we've ever seen. It features the Albany Firebirds from upstate New York taking on the Billings Outlaws. Here's a look at the brackets. We started the playoffs 2 weeks ago with 6 teams. Now we've got the championship game, and we have the top 2 seeds, the Firebirds, the number 2 seed, and the Outlaws, the number 1 seed. Hello to everyone, and welcome to our broadcast position alongside former Philadelphia Soul head coach Brett Muncy. I'm Ari Wolf. Well, Coach, it's been a long road to get here for these players and coaches, but this is what you play for, a chance to win a ring, a chance to win a title. These guys have worked extremely hard, and today's their opportunity to get a championship.
It's a great feeling, right? And like you said, they worked hard to get here. Now, you got to go get it. You got to find a way to win this game.
I feel like Coach is ready to get down on the field.
It was insane. It was in a mall, and they were able to set up maybe 2 or 3 bleacher levels in the ends, at the ends of the field. Otherwise, it was chairs ringing the field, and then there's a second and a third deck, and you just had people kind of milling around and stopping to watch the game. And this was their great idea. And it turns out that the teams didn't actually want to do that. It was a decision that the second league's leadership made, and then it was part of why they rebelled completely away from what was remaining of the league, and the remaining 8 teams then formed this Arena Football 1, which is going to take the field this next year, along with 4 new teams. And they've already dropped a couple of their expansion teams. They were going to be at 14, and now they're back down to 12. And, it looks only half as disastrous as it did last year, but it still is surrounded by question marks. And I think the biggest one is this is all built on some level of nostalgia for the original Arena Football League. I think that there's a big difference between the actual nostalgia that's out there and the nostalgia that these team owners feel is out there. I don't know what the end game is. Arena Football already had its heyday. It made it all the way on to network television. It had inflated franchise values because with network television was going to come bigger sponsors and more money, and that bubble all burst. It wasn't able to do it. The public acceptance just wasn't there. So I don't know what this new version is actually aiming for. It's a weird deal. I don't understand it.
All right, so we'll put Paul in the skeptical column for AF1 in 2025. That'll be for our next show. All right, I got 2 more for you guys. How much have you guys been following the journey, the success, the amazing story of the Savannah Bananas?
The Savannah Bananas were a collegiate wood bat team that started off in the Coastal Plain League. So that was my initial introduction to them, was just one of these collegiate wood bat teams, and just this colossal giant that they've been able to create with their Harlem Globetrotter style approach to baseball has been kind of fun to watch.
We had Jesse Cole on this show 2 springs ago. And indeed, we talked about the roots of the team and how he and his wife kind of just transitioned it into something else. And it is phenomenal how people have taken to it, the tour of it. I don't think he likes the Harlem Globetrotters analogy as much anymore. I think largely because he believes that this is beyond just a team showcasing skills. I don't know if you guys have read this, but there's a plan for a banana ball league of at least 4 to 6 teams that will play not just the Savannah Bananas and the I forget the other team that's sort of playing with them, but literally wants to create a league with these crazy rules. I think it's fascinating, and they cannot keep up with the demand in terms of people dying to see these games.
Oh yeah, ticket demand was huge here in Philadelphia when they were in town. Clients were asking me, "Hey, can you get me tickets?" I'm not that connected, but it's what we're and good for Jesse, and I'm glad they're successful. I really am. But as a baseball purist, what we're looking at here is almost like a social experiment. I mean, we have a generation, maybe two now, maybe it's millennials and Zers, who have very short attention spans because of the way sports are marketed, sports are modeled, the Sports Center highlight thing. And we're told baseball is really suffering in the process because it's too slow, it's too pastoral. And you have the banana ball, which is, I guess, what we're calling it, trying to find ways to juice that up. And tragically, you've got Rob Manfred stealing some ideas like the golden bat, as if starting people on second base in extra innings and things like that wasn't enough. He's actually talking about a golden bat because, he's afraid he's losing his audience. And I don't know how I feel about that, but it'll be curious if Cole's going to do a separate league that's now going to directly challenge your father's baseball. It's almost going to be, for us old folks, the 80s all over again. Indoor soccer or pure soccer, right? Is that what this is shaping up to be? And who's going to survive?
All right, that's a great segue to my last question, and then I'll let you throw stuff at me on our way out here. I've only been recently aware of this thing called the Baller League. Sent you guys an article about it the other day. And apparently this is, I guess this is sort of a hybrid son of MISL and these 1980s and now also Masters leagues that have been going on in Europe for some time. 6-a-side, it's indoor, but it's a combination of classic, but also just crazy new rules too. Very similar in spirit to what banana ball is on the baseball front. How much do you guys know about this? And do you recognize that it's coming to the United States next year? And people like Ronaldinho are part of it, and Figo is part of it, and it's sort of a mashup of like former players and young kids who are either social media whizzes or athletically inclined and that kind of stuff. It's wild if you see some of the video of these games.
Yeah, what's it? The Big Baller League, the 3-a-side in basketball. It's just a dumbing down of the game for people that don't want to watch sport and strategy, but want to watch video clip, basically live video clips. I want to see fancy moves. I don't want to see technique. I don't want to see skill. I mean, I won't give it the time of day. I can tell you that. Yeah, but then again, I'm not their audience. That's the point.
Right.
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to make. With it doesn't seem to be aimed at us at all. It's like let's do soccer without any midfield. Let's do basketball. Just keep shooting at the same hoop. It just all highlights. So I think that it's going to have a rough go of it in the U.S. because we have had indoor soccer and that kind of reached its zenith and now has flowed out and might be at a level that it can kind of sustain itself with the major arena soccer league, but a very low level and kind of a 3,000 to 4,000 people maybe watching it. I think it's going to have maybe a little bit of a tougher time in the U.S. Because of that, and because outdoor soccer now still seems to be growing in the U.S. maybe more than it ever has. So it'd be strange if it succeeded in the U.K., which always poo-pooed indoor soccer over here when it was a thing, and failed in the U.S. due to soccer snobbery with the outdoor fans.
Yeah, then again, big three in basketball, right? It's had an effect on the Olympics. 3 ice, on the hockey front. There's always these sort of like little, quicker sort of versions of stuff or the bests of. Slam ball, right? Which it came back this year, not really sort of as a competition, but mostly as an exhibition per se. But who knows? There's talk about maybe sort of putting some league rules around that too. It's just, to me, it's really interesting to be in this period of time that we're having this conversation. It does feel to me like it's kind of like the 70s reinvented. I think maybe fueled by silly money. And I don't know how long that's going to last, where, a third or fourth pickleball league or a couple of different volleyball leagues, or, where's team handball when you need it? I'm sure that's coming. But there just seems to be a lot of things being thrown against the wall. And who knows? Maybe is it because of short attention span theater, or the Twitchified kind of viewing experience, the implosion of television sports, people more active? I don't know, but it's a cornucopia of craziness, and I get the popcorn machine, because it's just, to me, it's fascinating. Not all of them are going to succeed. But I'd love to, have a video recorder for all of it, just in case.
Yeah, we've talked about the entertainment value on some of this stuff. We were just talking about the Pro Volleyball Federation. Yet, what are the economics of that? What do the economics look like? How was that not just a sea of red ink this last year? They have their games on YouTube. You're not monetizing TV at all. You're paying the athletes fairly well. Ticket prices alone aren't going to sustain something with national travel and major venue rentals, not to mention insurance and the athletes' salaries. So the economics on all this is just, three big question marks. But I think that there's a feeling that maybe down the line, we start collecting some coin for this. Well, is that doable, or is that really pie in the sky? It rarely happens.
Well, all right, guys, let me let's have at it. Any thoughts about what you're looking and seeing in your crystal ball in 2025, either good or bad or ugly? Any things that in particular you think might come around again, or some historical memories that might be reignited for some reason that we're not aware of, or some anniversary or something like that? Anything that's on your sports geekdom radars for this year, either a hot take or something you're looking forward to, or you're frankly worried sick about?
I'll give you both what's on my radar and a hot take. They're two separate things. 1925 will be the 100th anniversary of the American Basketball League. The first attempt.
2025. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. 2025. And so I guess I'll start firing up, trying to commemorate that 100th anniversary, because again, it was the first attempt at Major League Pro Basketball. I mean, there had been pro basketball leagues pretty much from the moment after Naismith invented the game, but it was always regional. Philadelphia, upstate Pennsylvania, New York. This was a league, had a lot of owners, NFL owners, bankrolling it. It was an interesting attempt. It was fairly successful, except killed by the Depression, which happened to a number of leagues. So that'll probably be the focus of a lot of my work in 25, gearing up to do something about that. I don't know if my hot take is a hot take as much as a wondering, and it's been prompted by Paul directing me to the International Boxing League. We talk about nostalgia fueling so much of some of these leagues, whether it's whatever version of the AFL is out there. The Major Arena Soccer League keeps trying to draw on fond memories of the MISL. In this country, boxing is iconic. I mean, there are films about it that still make big money. I mean, the Creed movies did well. It's a huge part of the American sporting landscape, and yet the sport itself has failed to exist. MMA has eclipsed it because people would rather watch the action and the blood rather than the science. So I'm really surprised where there's a need for TV content, where there's a love of nostalgia, that we haven't seen an attempt at pro boxing, putting them in actual cities, drawing on the fondness that Olympic boxing at least used to have prior to '88. We've rooted for teams before that someone hasn't tried to do that. And as opposed to I'd IBL as opposed to World Team Boxing, where it was all unranked fighters. You could probably get ranked fighters that get in on this now because there's no other place for them to go, practically speaking. And if you're looking for a team sport that hasn't been exploited yet, why not try boxing?
Yeah, that's interesting. The team format. I mean, we've talked about sort of the ebbs and flows of that with certain sports, right? I mean, golf has had its adventure. The bowling certainly did.
Bowling, yeah.
Yeah, but PBA has a team competition. The PBR has team competition. It is pretty interesting to see how things go from sort of tournament play to teams and stuff. But I think it also comes back to what we were kind of hinting at before. There's also, if they're really going to be teams versus just labels, emanating out of a studio or one field in one city, right? That feels hollow, right? That doesn't feel genuine. Just slapping on Oklahoma Outlaws or whatever it is, whatever the name of the minute is, right? Versus being grassroots, right? Or being connected to the community. That's a harder enterprise to do and requires a lot more thought, a lot more investment, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Some of these teams are pretty hollow.
Right, and I think even the Premier Lacrosse League, which tried to do a hybrid type of thing, it wasn't purely on a soundstage, but by going on tour, not really being rooted, it didn't take off. They realized they had to brand these teams with their cities, and it's been a slow rollout. I mean, it has been exclusively.
Is it too late for them, Steve, to gear shift into team-based play, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think lacrosse missed its window, to tell you the truth, and I think, I think it's too late. I don't think people are going to buy into it.
I want to get Jake Steinfeld on this show, talk about the Major League Lacrosse experience. So if you're listening out there, anybody's got a the Body by Jake is near you, let us know, please. Paul, what do you think? What do you got in your mind?
Well, for this next year, I'm keeping a pretty close eye on women's sports. I think a lot of the growth that we've seen have been in women's sports. You see kind of this belated, maybe a sudden expansion in the WNBA, which had sat still for so long. You look at the National Women's Soccer League, which actually has it has what all these other leagues want, which is a paying TV deal. They have some labor peace with a unique labor agreement with their players. So not only is a lot of the growth happening in the women's league, but maybe some of the innovation as far as how you deal with the players is happening there too. You have the launch of the USL Super League, which now essentially is going to have women's soccer available year-round at some level. The USL in general, how sustainable is their plan? Does Major League Soccer eventually want to completely take over Division II and Division III and cut USL out completely at some point? So between women's sports and then the crossover with soccer in general, that seems to be kind of our right now, kind of the growth where a lot of the rise and fall is happening right now.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. I'm pretty pretty heady on that too, and it just seems to me that as the television and media landscape changes, we're seeing a lot more windows. What used to be the quote unquote big networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, you're getting the broadest exposure on broadcast television. For the NWSL final, right? That was the MLS couldn't say that. They were on CBS, nationally, right? It's pretty interesting to see the WNBA certainly had more exposure than they ever had. It is, I think it's a symbiotic relationship, and I don't know. I think also the economics of it from a television perspective is because there's such a splintering of audiences out there. There's plenty of capacity out there to get stuff out there on fairly broadly available media channels. So I think it's just an interesting time for women's sports to take probably advantage of that.
Right, and to further that point on soccer, even Division II USL Championship had its final on network TV. Granted, it was noon Eastern, but still network TV. They took a flyer on this Division II league on network TV, and so that splintering. How do you get and hold an audience? How can you grow an audience? It wasn't the only USL game that was on network TV this year. Women's sports, certainly, the NWSL has spread itself around. It did great on ESPN. It did well. So, do you see where there might still be some room for growth? You certainly see why money would be looking at women's sports right now, and soccer, both, and the crossover between them.
Well, remember, there's still the X factor in soccer. That antitrust suit is still out there. And if a court decides that the Stevens Act doesn't give USSF, or by extension FIFA, the right to do a lot of what it does, it's either going to lead to a real explosion in investment, or maybe not. I mean, I'm surprised there's not more, and we could go on another hour, so I'm sorry I brought it up, but I'm surprised there's not more out there about that suit, because from what I understand, it's still out there, it's still live, it's not being settled, and with USF, if US Soccer loses control over the product, and it's the Wild West, things will get really interesting.
Yeah, our episode 353 with Steve Bank, a wonderful primer on this latent story that could upend a lot of things. I'll just throw out two that are sort of very similar in that regard that I'm keeping an eye out for. One in particular is NASCAR. With the charters between Michael Jordan's team and another team, they're kind of fighting against the man, and that man literally owns the whole lock, stock, and barrel of NASCAR. They own majority of the tracks. They own the whole kit and caboodle. It's still a family-run thing. It's a very privately held kind of dynamic. I don't know. I think there's more to come in that from perhaps an antitrust kind of perspective, and there's not a lot of competition, and some of it is economically rooted, but frankly, a lot of it is very similar. I don't call it conspiratorial, but monopolistic practices to prevent such from happening. And I think that's going to play out as well. I forgot what my other one was. It couldn't have been important. So guys, thank you. I appreciate this. The other thing was, it was minor league baseball, the continued hoovering up by Diamond Sports Properties to own seemingly every minor league baseball team in one organization, privately equity backed. Not good for the sport, I don't think. I don't even know if it's for the health of baseball either, but that's where it's going. And it seems like it's only getting worse. There's like dozens of teams now that are all housed and owned by one entity. I don't know how good that is for minor league baseball, but I don't know. That's my other thing I'm keeping an eye out for.
Well, and for minor league baseball too, we see kind of this return to the city hopping that we used to see quite often. We had a little bit of a lull coming out of COVID, and with Major League Baseball taking over the minors and establishing these 10-year player development contracts. And now all of a sudden that's done. And so you see the team in Pearl, Mississippi leave. You see the team in Zebulon, North Carolina leave. So we're starting to see more shifting and more of this, hey, build us a stadium and we'll come to your place and we'll abandon this place that we've been. And some independent team will take it over.
All news and notes for future episodes, guys. Thank you. Before we run, let's hear your promotional stuff for your various ventures. Again, give us your handles, your websites, and anything we should be looking out for in particular.
I'm at OurSportsCentral.com. Every day we're keeping an eye on the minors, keeping an eye on all these secondary leagues, as well as StatsCrew.com, STATS Crew.com, where we try to document the history of all these leagues, minor league baseball, minor league hockey, lacrosse, indoor, outdoor, everything that we can find. Steve's been a big help there. And as always, I'm trying to preserve the history of the old United States Football League, particularly the video of its games. So contact me if you're at all interested in that.
All right, deep breath. On my end, there's Crossecheck, cross.com for your professional box lacrosse history stuff. PhillyClassics.com will be coming in the new year. My Facebook page for basketball is Only the Ball Was Brown. On X for basketball, it's at In the Low Post. For soccer, it's at Soccer Maven, Soccer MAVN. And on Blue Sky, it's at steveholroyd.bsky.social.
Wow, that's a lot to keep up with. That's great, guys. No, that's awesome. This is you are two kindred souls, or afflicted patients along with me in this odd pursuit of what used to be in professional sports and all the things that might portend to become forgotten in sports in the future. And I love having conversations like this because it's just to me, it continues to be endlessly fascinating. And like the old Jay Leno Doritos commercials, there seems to be a huge appetite to continue to make more. So as long as that's the case, I'm going to keep pinging you guys to be on at least annual roundups and lots of different things in between. And hopefully you'll continue this journey with me if you'll have me. All right, once again, more conjecture and predictions. Let's see what happens next year, shall we? I have a feeling so many things are going to be happening, many of which we don't even know about yet or could never predict as of this moment. But that's why we keep making these shows, because Lord knows we know there's more grist for the mill to come. If you'd like to follow Paul and Steve, well, here you go. Paul Reeths can be followed at two different places online. Those are his two websites, as aforementioned. OurSportsCentral.com. That's the place where you can find all the doings of various smaller leagues, challenger leagues, and whatnot, news and information and scores and all that kind of stuff. His other site is Stats Crew, STATS, StatsCrew.com, and that's where all the statistics are housed for said leagues and teams and things of yore as well. So, and minor leagues and all that kind of stuff. So check Paul out at those two places. Fine follows they both are. Now, to follow Steve, it requires a little bit more dexterity. First, you heard him mention the upcoming site online is going to be called Philly Classics. And I believe that URL will be phillyclassics.com. So make an early bookmark on that, write it down, and we'll let you know when that is up and running. You can follow him online now, though, without having to wait, at crosscheck.com. That's CROSSE as in lacrosse. Crosscheck.com, and that's the place where he and his colleagues revel in various forms of pro lacrosse history here in these United States and even North America, including of Canada, etc. Online is that, but in social realms, you can follow Steve on the Twitter X thing. Two different places there. In the Low Post, that's at In the Low Post, 4 words, but 1 word, In the Low Post, where his handle is called Only the Ball Was Brown. And you could also follow him on Twitter X at Soccer Maven, SOCCER, Soccer Maven, MAVN, no E. For his occasional hot takes on soccer, which was one of his original sort of areas of interest. So again, on the Twitter X thing, you follow him In the Low Post or Soccer Maven. And on the Blue Sky, Steve can be found at his handle there is at Steve Holroyd. That's HOLROYD. And again, the handle or his title for his account there, again, is also Only the Ball Was Brown. You got that? Well, just pick one. That's all you got to do. And thank you for checking those guys out. Big supporters of the show for many years. While you're online, again, make sure you bookmark and visit often the GoodSeatsStillAvailable.com site. And again, that's where we post all of our episodes. You can point your friends there. Again, that's GoodSeatsStillAvailable.com. And also point your friends out, and yourself, by the way, to the merch section, where you can check out all of our great sponsors like Yinzelvania.com and oldschoolshirts.com and royalretros.com and even some of the great wares that you can find from tpublic.com. We get some shekels of referral love when you purchase something through those links, and we appreciate that very much. You can send us email at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com, and you can also send me a note to say thank you to Jerry Payne, the guy who puts all these pieces together each week. Payne Audio Excellence. I'll forward your messages of love and encouragement to him. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening for so long, for all these years, and many, many, many more episodes to come. Some A-list guests coming up, believe it or not. You stay tuned to your feeds there, and hopefully you will find lots of fun, frivolity, intrigue, and scintillating conversation as we continue our hot takes on teams that don't exist anymore, leagues that are forgotten, and perhaps even a few of those that may be lurching into that general direction. Thanks again. We'll see you in the new year, and be safe, everybody. Take care.